Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Push Podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, an experienced marketing and sales consultant with a science background, and I'm your host. This season of the podcast is essential listening for small and medium-sized companies looking for their next stage of growth. Myself and other experts will explore common problems in marketing, product, and sales. We will deconstruct them and then detail straightforward, evidence-based remedies for you. I aim to give you both inspiration and practical solutions to push through similar challenges in your own company. Thanks for being here, and don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Push Podcast. You're tuning into Season 3, Episode 5 today. This episode's all about marketing and sales measurement, particularly in mid-sized B2B companies. We're going to look at how to measure marketing and sales functions, the exact metrics, and why you should use them. So you might be wondering who will get value out of this episode. Here is who I think should listen. CEOs or GMs of mid-sized companies, small business owners, sales professionals who work in small or medium businesses, and marketing professionals who work in small or medium-sized businesses. And of course, just the generally curious. You're going to understand what metrics you should track to improve your growth, particularly in B2B. The case study or scenario that I use to demonstrate examples and illustrate concepts throughout this episode is through a fictional app development company called AppCrafter Studios. If you've been playing along at home this season, this is the same fictional company I used in episode 1 and 3 of this season. A quick background on AppCrafter Studios if you're just tuning in. They're a company of 50 staff, their CEO is Sarah Thompson, and they have 3 marketers on their team and 3 salespeople. Their revenue has been stuck at $15 million AUD for 2 years and it won't budge. They can't grow. Their recurring revenue arm of the business is very stable, bringing in $9 million a year with repeat clients and very little churn. The other arm of their business, though, is new projects and clients, which brings in $6 million a year, but acquisition only just keeps up with churn. Their churn in this area of the business is very high. That's the background on the company's situation, so you know what I'm referring to throughout this episode. But now, CEO Sarah wants to know what she should be getting her marketing and sales team to report on. What should they be measuring to best track and improve growth? We will answer those questions in this episode. Some of the specifics that this episode will cover include how to use science and studies in your sales and marketing measurements, the 4 categories of measurement within the sales and marketing departments that I recommend, a mental framework for thinking about the measurements you make, why it's important to differentiate between a buying process and a selling process, why the funnel is so flawed, how to bring more predictability to your marketing and sales functions, what share of search is and how it can help you to measure awareness, and how qualitative data makes you more money. To talk this through, I am joined again by growth and product marketing specialist Alex Urquhart. If you'd like to find myself or Alex online, you can find the links to our social media pages and websites in this episode's description, whatever platform you're listening on. But for now, let's bring in Alex. Hello, Alex. Good to see you again.
Great to be back.
Always good to chat. So today we're going to talk about AppCrafter Studios again. What are we going to talk about?
Now, from a previous episode, now that we've got the marketing and the sales team working together, which is a miracle in itself, well done, Sarah wants to know, what do you think they should be measuring?
Yeah, cool. So what the sales and marketing team should be measuring, or what the whole company should be measuring from a growth perspective. Happy, Sarah, to cover that in this episode for you. I'd love to talk about this. But I want to open this episode with a couple of concepts that I really love very deeply. And the first one being is there's a person called Tom Gilb who I follow, or I'm very familiar with his work. He's done some TED Talks. He's a management consultant. He's written some books. And he coined something which I want to preface this episode on, which he called Gilb's Law of Measurement, which is that anything you need to quantify can be measured in some way that is superior to not measuring it at all. So this principle promotes the idea that even imperfect measurement of the right things is better than A, no measurement at all, or even amazing measurement of the wrong things. So measure the right things imperfectly rather than measuring the wrong things perfectly.
I like that.
So put that in the back of your mind as you're listening to this while we continue to discuss various points and various metrics that you can look at. I did also want to talk about, which I know you've mentioned on episodes before as well, we need to clarify the game we play. We don't play a binary game. We don't play a perfect game, sales and marketing. That's not what it is. We play an intangible game. Don't expect perfection. That's not your goal. Your goal is to be directionally accurate. So you want to get enough right that you can get the outcomes you want. So give yourself a break. A lot of people, I'm sure you've found this in your consulting work as well over the years, and just as a marketer, there is sometimes this expectation around perfection. Sometimes people will read into a metric and want it to be more than what it is. It's just a metric. It's a data point. It doesn't do everything. Nothing does everything. Nothing's perfect. So I want to preface that there because I think that's important to say in this game. I'll quote the British statistician George Box. In 1976, he said, "All models are wrong, some are useful." So
I like that.
This is the concept I want to talk about in this episode. Measure what's worth measuring and useful. It won't be perfect, and that's okay. So if you listen to the last AppCrafter Studios episode 3, we discussed how the category buys and then looked at some research indicating that often 95% of a B2B category will be out of market at any given time, with only 5% in market. When prospects come into the market, 80 to 90% of them who come into the market go with a supplier they already know. Does this perfectly apply to every situation? No, this 95-5% rule. So you might have 93% of the category out of market at the time. It might be 97%. It's not perfect. It's directionally accurate. And that's what I wanted to speak about when I talk about studies and science. You use it to tell you the things that you can't see and you're never going to be able to see. And it gives you a place to start and to work around. You will notice throughout the series I do talk in quite idealistic terms because I think that's science job. The job of science is to pursue truth, be on a quest for irreducible truth. Very hard to do. But when we talk about these 95-5 rules, these type of things, the science gives us somewhere to start. That's what it does. It gives you a place to start. And then you and I, practitioners, these type of people, we can go, well, how can we apply this on the ground? You know, we know it's not going to be perfectly. We can't perfectly apply it. But how can we use that to inform what we do? I get a lot of groans when I present this type of information to organizations. Okay, well, what does that mean for our metrics? You know, and people sometimes have a metric or two or a few that's their job. They want to make it seem important, and they also are getting judged on it, regardless of its real importance.
I was going to say, and their leaders probably want those binary answers, as you said. Like they want, is it yes or no? How many buyers? How much money can I make? And there is no, as you said, there's indicators, but there's no.
Yes, we love tangible stuff as people.
Answers.
But I wanted to frame this up in that way because give yourself a break. It's a very, very difficult game we play. I say it a lot, but we're influencing the collective consciousness, and that's no easy task.
Agreed.
So a few things. So firstly, I would encourage AppCrafter Studios to, now they're starting to measure things, start with less metrics rather than more. So don't feel like you need to have 20 metrics that you're measuring. You can add things in time, but let's start with just some good metrics and very few of them. And I think that's a practical way for the teams to start. I like making every metric or every measurement fight for its life every month on the monthly report. If it's no longer serving you, stop measuring it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because in my experience, perhaps in yours as well, you will see a metric from 2 years ago. It just keeps turning up in the monthly report every month or the quarterly report or whatever, however you report. It wasn't useful back then. It's not useful now. Just get rid of it.
Yeah, okay, interesting. And you maybe a question on that is there any indicators of what would say it's not useful? Because I guess a lot of people would imagine the typical one, how much money are we making? Is it more than last month? The cost gone up? Have price gone up? What would be your advice if someone says, okay, how do I know when to kill a metric? It might be a big question.
It's a very broad question. What would I say to that? So I would say that if it doesn't contribute to the story of how people are buying in a meaningful way, get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Okay. So
which is a broad answer as well. But I would need to actually have a report up in front of me to be able to to answer that in a better way.
No, but that does make sense. So
Yep.
something that's not contributing to getting more business, more customers, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you can track vanity metrics and this type of thing sometimes. So metrics that, your social media followers, the reach, it's okay so long as, in my mind, you're flagging what it is. You're not pretending it's something that it's not.
Yep.
So that's what I'd say to that. But I want to cover 4 categories of measurements that I would encourage in this episode. So in the 3rd episode of this season, we spoke about the buying process and about how the team needs to be mainly focused on the buying process, the marketing and sales team. For those just joining, a buying process is the mental process a prospect goes through to buy from you. So from awareness through to purchase, what goes on in their head through that process. A selling process, on the other hand, is more focused on what the marketing and sales teams are doing. So they talk in terms of demos and meetings and calls and webinars, very focused on what the internal team is doing, not necessarily what's going on in the buyer's head. So I use buying process for a reason, and I use it against a sales funnel or a marketing funnel for a reason as well. So if you've been in business any amount of time, you've heard of a funnel. You've got to have heard of a funnel by now. But I want to do my quick little rant on the funnel and why I think it's a poor way to represent the buying process. So if you think about practical applications of a funnel that you had, like let's say a water funnel, you'll pour water in the top of it. All of the water will go all the way out the bottom straight away. It doesn't kind of hang around in awareness and in consideration and
or fall
preference.
out.
Yeah, and it doesn't fall out. Yeah, so it's quite a strange thing to me, and I don't like representing the buying process this way. I think it's inaccurate. And yeah, the concept of gravity pulling all leads, you just put them in the top of the funnel, they all go out the bottom. No, it won't happen. The other thing is, so I use a buying process and I represent it horizontally because people can go backwards, essentially. And it also indicates that there's work to be done to move them along the process. Whereas again, you look at the funnel, it looks like gravity just pulls it all the way through.
That's a good point.
So you'll hear me throughout this series probably rant about the funnel, hate the funnel. I think it's a terrible representation of the buying process for a discipline that's supposed to be able to communicate effectively. That's why I talk about a buying process. People can go through it, but they can also go backwards. So you could be aware of someone, then you could consider buying them, consider buying from a brand, and then stop considering. And then you're back in awareness, and then maybe 2 years later you forget about them. You're not even in awareness anymore. You've forgotten about them. So what I would do, like we're in a case of B2B, so AppCrafters Studios, I'll quote Professor John Dawes from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute here, where he says, there aren't that many business clients that will say, you know what? I'm comfortable signing a contract with a company I've hardly ever heard of before. So this is the value of a buying process because it's a process. They won't hear about you today and buy from you tomorrow. Sorry.
Not transactional.
Certainly not for an app development company.
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry. So what do I generally start off representing the buying process? So I use terms awareness, consideration, preference, then purchase. When you're working out a buying process, you uncover a buying process. You don't dictate a buying process because this is the process that someone's prepared to go through to do business with you. This is a starting point that I use, but bearing in mind that as you try to take people through it, you will be able to keep updating the process. So awareness being, I'm aware of AppCrafters Studios. Consideration being, I am considering buying AppCrafters Studios, buying from them. Perhaps I'm considering some other brands as well to buy from. Preference being, I want to buy from AppCrafters Studios, but I haven't yet. I'd prefer them over the others in the category, but I haven't purchased yet. So, and then purchase obviously being, I have purchased now. Yeah, you can have awareness without consideration. I'm sure that you listening, you know some brands you're aware of and you'd never consider buying from them. So that's you're seeing in awareness, not consideration, right? That's where I'd start. And the way that I'd do that is in a CRM, so HubSpot, Pipedrive, that type of thing. So ideally you want to know how many people we got in awareness, consideration, preference, purchase, and are we tracking that we keep moving people through that process? Awareness is a hard one to do, but I will mention a couple of heuristics that might help. Mainly, I would be looking at consideration. So these are people that you spoke to, you're aware that they are considering you. So you can flag that in the CRM. And then, you can measure preference in the CRM as well. Like, it's quite easy for the sales team to just move them through this process in the CRM, and purchase isn't an obvious one as well. You might, in time, certainly split out consideration probably into an initial consideration, further consideration, deep consideration. Like, there'll definitely be a breakdown of these categories as you start to see, there needs to be another step in the process.
Yep, for sure. And is that sort of the behavior? It's like sort of going, here's the main 3 or 4 that we think, and then it seems to be everyone gets stuck here, or there's multiple steps at this point, break that out into each sort of additional one.
Yeah, because let's say AppCrafter Studios are talking to people and they're considering it, but then they keep going back to their CFO, and the CFO keeps poo-pooing it, right? Like, so you got consideration from the person you were talking to, but you couldn't get consideration from an executive,
gotcha,
for example.
Yep.
So that might be a way you'd split up, knowing, we need the person we're talking to consider us, but we need the executive who's going to sign off to consider us too.
The person who's got the budget is the person to consider. Yeah, 100%.
So sometimes people will say to me, well, why don't you track leads? Well, this is leads, right? So this is breaking down leads into a more granular measurement. That's all. So a few things I would talk about with awareness. Now, one thing you can use is something called share of search. So when people are searching in Google, you can have branded keywords that are relevant to your company, or you can have non-branded keywords. So if people were typing in AppCrafter Studios, branded keyword. If they were typing in AppCrafter Studios price, branded keyword. If they were typing in software development company, non-branded keyword. So relevant to AppCrafter Studios, but not specific to their brand.
Interesting.
So when people type in AppCrafter Studios or some derivative of that, obviously they're aware of you.
Yep.
They access their memory to then type that in. So that's something you can track. You can track increase in branded keywords over time.
Yep.
So quarterly, half yearly, yearly. The share of search part comes in. So the share comes in that, let's say that your keywords or your branded keywords go up in search volume. More people are searching for AppCrafter Studios, but maybe your competitors go up in orders of magnitude higher than you. So even though the principle of your search increased, the share of search decreased because relative to your competitors, they're getting more attention in the category. So you can use principle to go, look, we got 1,000 branded searches last year. We got 4,000 branded searches this year. We've got 8,000 this year. You can use the principle to go, this is an indicator of awareness.
Yep. And that's what you were saying about those metrics that lead into sales. If your rate of sales each year has been the same, but your branded search score has halved, then that's kind of interesting, right? Because it's like, well, people looking for you, but you're only the same amount of customers, so maybe there's something else there.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like that.
So that's the first category I would talk about is awareness, consideration, preference, and purchase. And I don't think you need to even worry too much about awareness at this level, but you can. The second category of measurement I'll talk about just briefly, because I'm always expressing my distaste for behavioral metrics. So website traffic, email database size, open rates, this type of thing. Yes, track it. But unless they're falling off a cliff, don't stress about them too much. Honestly, they don't tell you too much. Someone being on your website for 2 minutes doesn't tell you much. It just doesn't. But they are worth having a look at. You don't want your open rates going from 30% to 9. So yes, if they're absolutely going to shit, something is up. Keep an eye on them. Okay. Everyone's going to do that anyway. It doesn't matter if I say this or not. Everyone loves behavioral metrics. So doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what I say. But okay, have them in there. Fine. Have it your way. Thirdly, I would track the NPS, so Net Promoter Score. So in this case of AppCrafter Studios, there is a problem with churn. So the Net Promoter Score basically is a tool that is used to measure advocacy. So are you going to go and tell other people that we're good? Are you going to talk about my brand? And are you going to say good things, or are you going to say bad things? Everyone's seen a question on some software platform. How likely out of 10 are you to recommend our brand to a peer or a colleague? Questions like that. And the theory of the Net Promoter Score is that from 1 to 6, if someone gives you a score of 1 to 6 out of 10, they're a detractor. They don't like you. They think your brand is shit.
Which is interesting because the 6, that's 60%.
Well, 6 is bad, yeah.
That's right.
So, they're going to say, no, not that good.
Yep.
So a passive is 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10. So that means that they're not going to say you suck, but they're probably not going to say how awesome you are either. A promoter is 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. So they're someone who will actively, according to the methodology, talk about you and say, AppCrafter Studios are good. So that's something I would track here as well. So how could you use it? So on the micro level and the macro level, I would use it differently. So with your detractors, for example, again, with a company that deals in LTVs of this size, in purchase prices of this size, it's okay to have one-on-ones. That's justified in a company like this. So you actually want to talk to your detractors. You actually want to know what the hell went wrong.
Yeah.
Because that then informs you where you made the mistake in the buying process. Where was the wrong expectation set? That's one way. But the other way to think about it is, were we ever going to make them happy? So, which is a targeting issue.
Yes.
So if we said yes to someone we were never going to be able to make happy, we should have said no.
Should have said no. Yeah. And when you say detractor, you're talking about people who have gone through the process who haven't bought from you or have bought from you.
So this is after purchase, yeah.
After purchase.
So this is advocacy.
Yep, advocacy. Yep.
Or lack of.
Yeah, right. So
or fury, advocacy or fury.
So they're sort of bought from you, and then it's like they're either, as you said, the NPS, they're going to be super stoked, or they're going to, probably never going to use you guys again, or whatever that sort of key is. And it's like, well, why? Like, well, you built an app and we didn't want an app. It's like, well.
Yeah. Well, that would be.
Weren't the right person to begin with then.
Yeah. They could be going from a company that had bill shock, for example, and they came to you because they thought they weren't going to get bill shock anymore because you have locked in fixed monthly rates or whatever. But then you were really slow compared to the other company. So you did attract them through something that they were annoyed about with their current provider.
Yep.
But
saved a pay and created another.
Yeah. Effectively.
Yep.
So
interesting.
So that's some of the things that can come out. It does get a bit of criticism I see from some of the scientists and that about how sound it is, but I want to go back to quoting Fred Reichheld, who is the one who did coin the Net Promoter Score. I've watched him on a few things recently, and he says that the Net Promoter Score was never meant to be a target. This was about delighting customers. This is about the understanding that when you do business with a customer, you touch a life, and you can do that in a positive way or a negative way. He says that when people started attaching, in his words, so when people started attaching targets to it and frontline compensation, at that point, yes, it gets game. So the moment you turn a measure into a target, you've destroyed its credibility effectively. Yeah, and especially if you link it to a person, like their compensation, they'll game it.
Yeah, I was going to say, then they start increasing the metric for the sake of the metric.
Exactly.
They lose track of the goal, what they're trying to do. Yeah, that's a good point.
They lose the data on the 3 detractors. And
Yeah. It's always like a game of basketball. It's like, we want you to pass 10 times, but they score nothing and lose. It's like, well, you could have passed 20 times and we lost. Doesn't matter. Yeah. So lose track of the goal.
But yeah, and I think it is important if you talk to detractors that, you do try and figure out where it went wrong. Might be the salespeople that you need to talk to and go, hey, you said this back here, and they're not happy about
the right
that.
expectations with them, maybe. Yeah.
So you sold something we can't do, mate. No one else knew you said that. Why'd you say that? But yeah, so there's a way to use it as a micro in the detractors to know what went wrong. And it could be a targeting issue or it could be an issue with your company.
Gotcha.
As far as the promoters, if you talk to them, they can show you things that they love that you don't promote. It can inform like what you communicate to the market and go, well, we talk about this all the time. We talk about X all the time, but all our customers love us because of Y. So maybe we should talk about Y. And so it can inform that. That's at the micro level. At the macro level, so long as you segment the customers, the ones who are the wrong target versus the ones that you stuffed up, you can look at it as a way to allocate budget. If your NPS is great, let's say 9 for the customers that, are the right customers, you might go, well, we don't really need to put any money into customer success, any more money into that. We don't need to maybe put any more money into product marketing or the type of things that might have led to a poor NPS.
Gotcha.
If you've got a shit-ass NPS, on the other hand, it may indicate that okay, we've got a shit NPS, and also we know that's because customers come on board and then they're just left to their own devices, right? So you go, okay, well, we need some
better support,
more customer success, or we need something there to keep our customers happy and make sure that we do increase that metric. So
maybe the metrics in that case, if the targeting was fine, right customer, right place, but then they're falling off as they're going through, it's like, all right, money on targeting and leads or front end doesn't really matter. It's more of support, maybe hire that, as you said, that CS person, or get that person there at the front. So plug the gaps where they actually are instead of throwing budget at things. God forbid.
And that's the macro application, I would say. So Fred Reichheld, for anyone who's interested, he has come out with this new concept called an earned growth rate, because he just reckons that NPS has been flogged to death and it's being used and abused, which is just basically how much of your growth is derived from customers coming back for more and bringing their friends.
Interesting.
So earned growth rate, if anyone wants to look up that, it's outside the scope of this episode, but it's an interesting concept.
Interesting.
So the fourth category of measurement I would be looking at is qualitative insights. So people will go, that's not a measurement. But you want to be bringing back your qualitative insights every meeting you have with the team. What did we learn about the market? What did we learn about the buying process this month? Get any insights possible. Keep that highly visible. And I do get pushback at times from people on this because they say, oh, no, I prefer the data. Well, qualitative data is data too.
Absolutely.
And this idea that it's not is wrong.
You can bring that context too, right? It's like NPS might be going up and leads are coming up, but then without actually knowing why. Like as you said, you speak to the person who leaves, you're going to get far better context as to why they left. I agree.
Exactly, yeah. So I will talk about when people say or think that this doesn't make them money. Yeah, that's wrong. A couple of examples just come to mind in the last year that I've done where I was working with a company and they had a low price product, let's say $1,000, and they had a $12,000 product. These are not exact measurements, but you get the idea. And the $1,000 product was super popular. So let's say 2,000 people bought that and the expensive product wasn't. Not many people bought it. So there I did this thing where I would ask the people who'd bought the cheap product or the cheaper product, would you be interested in the expensive product? 30% said yes.
Wow.
They're interested. So what we'd do then is that we'd take those people and we'd just pump them straight into consideration in the CRM around the other product.
Interesting.
So if you think about that, that's wild. So people who've already trust your brand, who like your brand, a significant chunk of them are interested in your more expensive product, and you're just not getting that insight in. That's insane money you're missing out on. Huge. So this idea that qualitative insights don't make you money is simply wrong. And the only way you can really know is by asking them.
Correct.
Does this other product interest you as well?
Yep.
I worked with a SaaS company last year, and I talked to their customers. Obviously, I love doing that, as we know. Everyone's sick of me saying that, but I'm saying it again. Love talking to the customers.
I like it.
And there was one critical feature that they wanted to develop. They were saying it over and over again, which was going to drive more action, more purchases, and heaps more action and purchases. So the only way to know is to talk to them. The only way we would have got that information. So keep an eye on this. Make sure that you keep trying to get as many qualitative insights in as possible all the time. Put it on the report, because it keeps it front and center then. What did we learn, this month? And you can use that. You use qualitative data. It helps you ask the right questions. The quantitative data is then the measurement of those questions. So, for example, if someone in your category says, AppCrafter Studios, I wanted a app development company that would organize massages for me every week. You're like, well, you're probably the only one in that category who wants that. So that's taking the qualitative insight from someone and going, all right, is anyone else saying that? Like, is this a common thing? People might say something and they might mean it and it might be important to them. But then the quantitative part is, so how many people does that matter to?
Yes.
You can't work that out without knowing what to measure, though.
Yes.
And the qualitative part tells you what to focus on.
Correct. And I think that goes on there too as well. I think that quantitative side of things is you're saying about the B2B guys, and some of these I would imagine these sales, not funnels, processes take up to months, if not maybe even a year before someone makes that decision. And if you're only using those sort of lag indicators of are they purchasing, are they not, you may have to wait 3, 6, 12 months before you get that data, and it's like by that point it could be too late. So yeah, I agree. Having those indicators, I don't know if you call it, but lead and lag. You refer, one old boss used to talk about a lot of, you can't control the lag, you can't control the lead. And as you said, it's like hearing the market feedback directly from them, changing some things, and then all of a sudden more leads start coming through. You can fairly say within some form of certainty percentages, we should have X amount of customers by this point. So yeah, I think
it brings tangibility to the pipeline effectively. And if we know generally we are moving 20 people, this would be too high, 20 people from consideration to preference every quarter, for example, can start to extrapolate that out a bit. And you also make sure you keep bringing people through. So it's not like, oh, we've had all these people purchase and then you need more people who aren't even aware of you, right? And then you got to start the process again. You want the process to be working all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's and I agree. So if you know that 5% start and finish at the end, then it's like, well, you better fill those leads, because if you need to triple revenue, you got to put 300 or something through the front end.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I like that.
The other thing I would mention too is, again, the indicators, because someone can be aware of your brand and you not know, or they don't take an action, or there's just nothing that you can have access to that tells you that. They can be considering you and they haven't taken an action. They could prefer you, they haven't taken action, they haven't talked to you. There's all these things that can happen that you can't see.
Yes.
So again, be wary of that, because we're using indicators here. We're using measurements. We're not using targets. Yeah.
Kind of funny you sort of say that. I don't know, boss used to call them bluebirds, I think, or blue. It was sort of like, as you said, then you can have people to go through all the right stages and they give you confirmation, meet their team, and they go nowhere. And it's like, well, everything was indicating there was going to be the right thing. And then it'd say there'd be certain ones that have, guys spoken to an old colleague of yours who recommended you're amazing and really good, and he's done his own research and business case, and then all of a sudden they rock up and it's like, we'd love to purchase, $100,000 from you guys. And it's like, where did this come from? No indicators, no measurement. Again, hopefully that's an anomaly. It should be people follow as you say, those typical stages. But
that person went through the buying process though.
Yeah, interesting.
So because that's the mental process, it's the buying process.
True.
They didn't go through your selling process.
Yeah. Or your measured parts of it.
Yeah. The tangible parts that you can see and attribute to that person.
Yep.
They might have read your website. You might not have known they were on your website, or they could have done lots of things, but they still went through a process.
Yep. Whether you're aware of it or not.
So I would just finish off with saying 4 categories of measurement I would use. Now I would do definitely consideration, preference, and purchase. Start there, knowing that will probably break down initial consideration, further consideration. You will see more steps as you go along, but this is a high level starting point. You want to keep working on your buying process over time, but it's a start. Measure awareness if you want, or find a heuristic that you can use, or an indicator if you like. Share a search, you could use that. I would keep an eye on your behavioral metrics, your comms metrics, your website traffic and your email database size and all that stuff that I know most people love. NPS, Net Promoter Score, I'd encourage that too, especially in this situation, considering the problems with Appcrafter Studios churn, and also just the love of the recurring clients that is not churning at all. So we have
two extremes.
Things,
yeah, that's interesting.
Why do they love you on this side, and
why do they not hate you, but maybe they're not coming back?
And then the 4th thing is just qualitative insights that I'd be bringing back every month.
Yep, I agree.
So bring that back in, share it with a wider team. Those are the 4 areas I would be looking at.
Awesome. That's great. So this is good. So Sarah's got it. They're sort of measuring it. They're on the right track. It's moving forward. Now, it doesn't really explain who they should target to get this done.
That's true. Who should they target? Let's cover that in episode 7. Sarah, I'm going to talk to you about how to go about targeting in episode 7.
Perfect.
And I'm excited to do that.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, mate.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, and if you are enjoying the episodes, please leave a review of the podcast on your platform of choice. It really helps to build the podcast credibility and to help others find this type of information.